A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May we urge all of you to kindly settle down. Now remember that the next session is going to have the speakers talk for 10 minutes each. Of course, post that we're going to be having lunch. So if you delay now, remember the lunch is going to start later. So it's a very simple way of asking all of you to settle down. So another minute. For all the ones who are networking, who want to continue networking, may we please request you to step outside. The ones at the back, may we urge all of you to kindly settle down for the moment. And also, can we get the tea and coffee to be stopped? Stop the tea and coffee. Thank you. I think most of us are on the third tea or third coffee. It's fine. we can let go of the fourth, right? All right, ladies and gentlemen, one final request, please, urging all of you to kindly settle down. Remember, if we delay now, it's going to be a delayed lunch. All right, that's the best way of getting a panel to start, right? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, first, just introducing to you the plenary session 4. Initially, of course, as per agenda, it was supposed to be a panel discussion, right? But then the team came up with the conclusion that let's give all the speakers 10 minutes each to talk. Now remember, to a kind admission to all my speakers, that when you see me standing, I'm the live timer. So if I stand, that means your 10 minutes are done, all right? So we would urge that just in respect of all the other speakers who are speaking after you, to please complete within 10 minutes. And normally in a panel discussion, you might not get more than that, right? So individually, everyone's going to get 10 minutes. No bias to anyone, so everyone's going to stick to only 10 minutes. So ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the ethics and trust at the heart of today's technology-driven businesses, diversity, inclusion, enabling an organization and driving innovation, which leads into transformation. And of course, we're going to be hearing a lot more from the perspective of what our speakers would like to contribute, if any area of interest they would like to also touch upon. So on that note, first up, for our first speaker, we'd like to call upon Dr. Kanan Khatau, who's the founder of Mind Celebrations. Dr. Khatau holds he's a doctor of homeopathic medicine and a psychologist. Also, the founder of Life Cures Wellness Clinic that strives for wellness, happiness in families and individuals since 2001. Also, the co-founder at the Whole Brain Consulting, a coaching, consulting, and training organization. So let's bring in Dr. Khatau for the opening on this topic. So do we have Dr. Khatau with us? Okay. Shivin Tikoo is next. Do we have Mr. Tikoo in the room? Okay, let's go ahead with him then. All right. So Shivin, of course, being the CHRO of Mahindra First Choice Wheels, oversees all the aspects of HR domain and collaborates with the executive team to align HR strategies and business goals, contributing significantly to the organization's growth. So with that, let's give Mr. Tikoo a warm round of applause as we welcome him. And Mr. Tikoo, over to you for your remarks on the same.
Hello. So thank you so much and a very good morning. And thank you, Team N-Cube Collaborations, for having me here. It's always a pleasure to speak to an August gathering. So once again, Merpadi sir and Sanjay sir, thank you so much for having me here. Before I start, as protocols, the views which I express are, personal to me and not that of my organization. So this I'm speaking in my personal capacity. So what I want to talk about is the larger aspects of AI and how AI is influencing us. So recently, I have a 10-year-old daughter and who is going to the school, and every time there is a question about a maths or a science, invariably what happens is she comes to me and says, "Ye question nahi ban raha hai, Papa, solution batao." So when Papa goes and gives her a solution, and then she says, teacher was better. teacher taught me in this way, so I will go by what teacher's method. I don't really trust you. Of late, in the last, I would say 6 months, the teacher has now been replaced by ChatGPT. So now she says, if ChatGPT made this is the solution, then it is right. So what I realized over a period of time is that the hierarchy is this. You have ChatGPT, then you have teacher, and then last you have the father. So, so invariably, even if I say that, this is the right answer, she says, no, if a teacher has said, and now that ChatGPT has said, so that is the right method, and I have submitted, or at least in the hierarchy of needs, I realize that I'm the bottommost. Which brings me to an interesting aspect of AI. I think AI is invariably one of the most important disruptions which we are having in our life stages. When we wake up, all across the apps, the coming to office, using the tools, techniques, we cannot take AI from our lives. What I would want to speak about is 3 messages, and these are 3 themes about AI, which would be part of your working lives, whether you are in academics or whether you are in industry, but these are something which we need to watch out for. The first is the role of AI and the regulatory and the governance on it. When we speak about the larger aspects of AI, you would have standards, governance, frameworks, which would now start to kick in. So, for example, you would have countries. USA has AI Kazar. At Mahindra Group, we have a CEO who is responsible for Mahindra AI. So, one is the government and organizations are creating specific roles on AI. As the head of AI, we used to say data is the new oil. What would increasingly happen is that AI would be the new oil. Now it's interesting to see whether, and a good example is like that of OTTs, right? So when OTTs came to India, all the OTT platforms said that instead of government giving us guidelines, the INB giving us guidelines, we would create certain framework on our own. So whether the AI companies come together to do it or whether it's government who would shape it, that's matter of time, but definitely they would be. And the reason why it will come is, for example, if you kind of read about it, you have, so right now what is happening is you have large language models or the chat GPT, what it's called, but increasingly you have AI agents. In a lot of experiments which we have, which the AI scientists have done, they have started realizing that if AI is not controlled, if there are no guardrails, so there will be a lot of biases which come. And some of the biases may come from the pattern that you have a majority, and the majority's pattern then gets reflected in the AI tools. So you would definitely see a lot of regulatory and standards and governances coming in AI. So that's a big theme to watch out for. I'll give you a few examples in the next part, but that's that is something which we would need to understand, and we need to understand how it will evolve. The second aspect of the technology and the disruption, and that's where it gets interesting, is the role of AI in decision making. So right now, what we see is a lot of technology helps us to do our daily course of, for example, writing an email, or for example, if you're in HR, writing a job description. So these things are what I may call process or an activity. So you have a process, you typically use AI, and the process or the activity gets done. Now, where it gets interesting is that AI would start taking decisions. So that's the second theme of when AI role gets into actual decision making. Till now, it was largely peripheral of process and activities. And I'll give a few examples of what I mean by that. So as I said, for example, if you are a recruiter, you have job description, and invariably nowadays all of us use AI to generate a job description, and then we do some what's called prompt engineering to make it more specific. What's get interesting is, and if you look at a lot of startups in this area, for example, uh, one of my colleagues who is a doctoral student with me, so he has a startup in which, let's say you have thousands of CVs. Now, as a recruiter, you don't have time to filter through thousands of CVs. What would typically happen is you have these recruitment tools which would filter and give you a stack ranking of the top 5 or top 10 profiles. So imagine thousands of CVs and the AI doing the menial task of shortlisting the top 5, top 10. Now, what is more interesting is what are the underlying assumptions and what are the frameworks how the AI has shortlisted, and if there is any bias or if there is any challenges in that. So, what would increasingly happen is if you realize that AI would start taking decisions or at least recommendations at this stage and maybe decisions later to areas where it is subjective and contextual. So, for example, the tool can be used, let's say, for a mass marketing BPO call center, or it can also be used in pharma. The point I'm making is that it is contextual. So, each industry might have to be tailor-made, and second, it's subjective. So, which of the 10 of 1,000 CVs which you need to shortlist is again subjective, because you might have various parameters and different parameters and factor rankings and so on and so forth. So that's where it gets interesting. And what would be the role of corporates like us or the platforms would be that it would be built on transparency, trust, ethics of decision making. And that's where it gets interesting. So right now what we see is AI being very peripheral in terms of our usage. But increasingly when it becomes very intrinsic to your decision making, is that's where things start to get, things start to get very interesting. Which is the third theme also is the entire aspect of, So the entire aspect of AI's role in organizations. So we keep on talking about a lot of disruptions, and if you study a lot of literature over the years, and I'm doing my doctoral studies in PhD in org change management and things like that. So if you study a lot of literature, you would see that invariably lot of innovation or disruption doesn't come from within the industry, it always comes out from outside. As I can see, for example, when was the last time one did use a learning platform? Invariably now, let's say the Chat GPT or the co-pilots have become my learning platform. AI would also start looking at disruptions. And these disruptions, as I said, would start coming from AI rather than from core within the industry itself. Which also brings to how AI is shaping our organizations and ways of working. So for example, think of it. You have a traditional org structure where you have an individual contributor, manager, department head, then CXOs, and then the board. What about your first-time manager, instead of managing resources, starts managing AI agents? So the entire paradigm changes. So the person is still a first-time manager or a manager of some sort, but instead of managing humans, the person starts to manage his processes, and processes which are AI and tech enabled. So it's a way different org structure, it's a way different competencies, skill building, ways of working. You will not probably have a traditional org structure, you probably have a team and networks and matrices. So that's the third theme which I want to leave you with, is AI and how it is shaping the entire org structure. So the final departing thoughts, it's interesting time. Three themes which I want you to focus on is, first, as I said, AI and the regulatory framework. Second was the AI and the decision making, especially when it's subjective and contextual. And third is AI and the ways of working in terms of an organization, the skills and the competencies and how it's shaping. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tikoo. Of course, we're going to be doing the felicitation and the token of appreciation for all our speakers at the end of this session, because as a group, we would definitely encourage all of them to be in one frame. So towards the end, we'll do the token of appreciation for all our speakers. Mr. Tikoo, the points which you covered regarding AI being in the workplace, of course, we all have to admit that now is the time for AI acceptance primarily, and also how do we leverage that platform or that technology to our betterment. So thank you, Mr. Tikoo, for such great insights to the same.